Why true leaders rarely make great managers. He's here to share insights from his 20 years of leading teams. Please welcome Kevin G. Armstrong. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Daniel, for inviting me.
My pleasure. I was watching your video on YouTube last night and I see that it's already ticked over 1 million views on your TED Talk. Incredible. Congratulations.
On TikTok, is that right? Wow.
I saw it on YouTube.
Oh, yeah, you saw it on
TEDx.
Yeah, right on.
Big numbers. Well done.
Well, thanks. It was something I worked on for a long time. I'm not a good manager, so it's always been a motivator for me to understand why I'm not a good manager.
Yeah. When did you have that realization?
I think when I started to realize, that a great manager is organized, and so that leaves me out. I came up sort of with great managers or coaches, so we call them man coaches in the book. Are people who could connect with people. They're empathetic. They're process driven. So I didn't realize this until I read James Clear's Atomic Habits a couple of years ago. Where great, really, what he was saying was, I was driving down the road and he said, what's more important, process or goals? And I was thinking, goals. My whole life, goals have been the most important thing. And he said, no, I often talk to the radio when I'm listening to a book. I said, goals. And he said, no, process. That 10-year-old girl who's with her coach this morning at 5 o'clock swimming laps is following the coach's proven process. And so fast forward 10 years from now, she's on the top podium at the Olympics getting the gold medal. That wasn't her goal this morning. She was just following a coach's process. So managers, they're really into process, and they don't make their teammates follow it. They sell them on why they should follow it, and they're good at selling them on it. So process driven, numbers driven. So that leaves me out. Very data driven. If you look at any coach or manager, I like sports because sports shows it. And so if you look at a cricket coach or anybody, they know the numbers. They know that when that person grabs the bat, what their chances are. And so it's a very, very, I think, unappreciated position as a manager or coach in terms of the talents that it involves. And these are things that are interdependent. You can't just say, well, I'm organized and I've got this but you have to have the courage to talk to people. You have to have courage to deliver the bad news and hold people accountable. And so, that as opposed to a leader. So a great manager or coach gets things done efficiently and effectively through others. A great leader looks to the future and does the right thing, no matter what anybody else thinks. And we follow them because we trust them to do that.
And over the years, how did you come to these realizations? Was it from being in the field? Was it from watching others? Was it from your research? How did you come to these discoveries?
Well, for over a quarter century now, I've been working with business owners, and I've been meeting with them monthly. And in 2005, Wayne Gretzky, who's a iconic hockey player, like Reggie McCaw in Australia with rugby, Wayne had retired, and they made him coach of the Phoenix Coyotes. And I walked into a group of business owners in 2005 and said, he's not going to do well. And I don't know why. I couldn't put any data behind it. And of course, he did fail. And he only lasted 4 years because he owned part of the team. He would have been fired in his first year. And so I hired a researcher, and I said, can you do me a favor? Let's look at hockey, baseball, and basketball, because I have over 100 years of data to compare. I want to follow the top players that went into coaching and see how they did. 20% chance. And we just set the bar. They just had to win more games than they lost. We consider them successful if they had a 0.5 winning average or better. And so after we researched all the data in 3 different sports, your top players usually are not great managers or coaches. And that does not qualify them as a great manager or coach just because they can play the game. And now with Ted Lasso, I mean, I know it's fiction, but I don't know if you've seen Ted Lasso, but it's a great watch. in terms of an entertainment show, but here's a North American football coach that goes to London, England, or goes to England and coaches a soccer team. And he's got the qualities where it really doesn't matter what the sport is. It's really about how to manage.
Mm. It's interesting. In my time in sales, I've seen a lot of businesses say, you're a great salesman or woman, you should lead the team. And the salesperson is shaking their head saying, you don't want me in that role.
No.
But the company's like, but you're the best. You can just teach everybody else what you're doing and we can have another 100 people like you.
Yeah.
And they get in there and they often fail.
Yeah.
But I think they were more set up to fail.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I was a salesperson. I was a top salesperson in the country. And they made me a manager. And I did take the job because it was status. It was more money. But I was terrible because I wanted everybody to just do what I did. And I had no idea of how to connect. I wasn't organized. All the things that you see in a great coach or manager, I just took it for the wrong reasons. But luckily, I had a good president who took me under his arms. I worked for 5 years, and we did a pretty good job together because he sort of held me in check, and he looked after all those weaknesses and covered for me on the weaknesses. But that's where I realized I wasn't a good manager. Just that scenario. We take our top salesperson and we make them a manager, and then they're not good. Now they can't save face, so they have to leave the organization. And you just lost a really good a really good salesperson by not understanding that a great leader, your top salesperson, does not necessarily have the qualities to be a manager or coach.
Mm. What's the subsequent impact on the culture? Because everybody's watching. Everybody sees what happens. They know that the company's headhunted them. They've said it out loud, you're the best. We're going to put you in management, teach these people what to do. Mm-hmm. And everybody's watching the setup for failure. And then when it fails, as it does, what happens to the culture?
Well, I work with a lot of companies, probably 400 or 500, the leadership teams of companies over the last 25 years. And, the culture has to be objective driven, not agenda driven. So it's already, give you an example. When we talk about status, in your small entrepreneurial get it done kind of culture, they realize quickly that that the manager or the person we want managing those people is just a real person who understands people and has those qualities we talked about. And so they tend to make those choices naturally if they have that real culture where status doesn't matter. And I think the best example is you look at Americans and the ratio between the managers or the vice presidents and presidents, what that disparity is between your top performers and top managers. And you go to a country like Japan where it's, I just read something where the salary of the president of Costco versus Sam's, which are two huge big box stores in the United States.
I saw this on your Facebook page.
Oh, did you? Yeah. And just that's the Costco is a company that understands what we're talking about in terms of culture, because you asked a great question, and in terms of culture. And so Costco has a great culture, and I wonder what came first. I think the culture came first from the founder saying, hey, Costco sends out housewives to buy their wine around the world because they don't want sommeliers, professional with their noses up, choosing the best wines. They want what the family's like, and the best person to send out. Now this is 10 or 12 years old. Maybe they've changed, right? I'm being kind of sexist here in terms of or gender driven, but basically I remember the CEO mentioning that they choose housewives because those housewives know what they like. And so you'll be sitting in Australia in charge of a winery, and these two women come to taste wine, and you don't realize they could be changing your life forever if they like your wine. And so that's the difference between Costco and why they're so successful. So your question about culture is a really complicated one, but I think if you look at it, it's the culture first that takes that whole status and agenda driven person out of play and looks at who is that person that can connect with people and be a good manager or coach and put people first and put the company first.
I think reflecting on that post you had on Facebook, the disparity between one business to the other was one had nearly no to low turnover and the other one was 44% higher per year.
Yeah.
So you're losing 44% of your workforce. That's a big impact on the culture.
Yeah.
We have that group dynamic, forming, storming, norming, and performing. A company with 44% turnover never gets out of the storming phase.
No.
The team are always at each other's necks because somebody's coming in, somebody's leaving, there's instability, there's fear of, losing their stability. Who's next?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a horror.
And the problem is the people at the top. I mean, Jim Collins did a ton of research. And I remember there was a stage where he said, let's just ignore the leaders, the CEOs and the vice presidents, and let's find out what's down below that drives it, that drives this behavior. And after all of his research, he had to come back and say, it is a leadership team. It is the CEO at the top and the VPs. And if they're totally status driven, only out for themselves in terms of how much money they make, and they don't care how many people on the front line, how much they make, they're just into keeping the board happy with share price and that type of stuff at the expense of people not even be able to make a living. Whereas you go to Costco and these employees love it there and they're making a good income. People line up to get a job there. So
I think it was a $10 to $15 difference per hour in their wages.
Yeah, exactly.
And about $20 million difference between one CEO's earning and the other one who took home $1 million.
That's right.
But these are key. This idea of having housewives or house husbands tasting wine, I think this is how all...
I should have said housewives and house husband. Good for you.
I think this is how all businesses should operate. Because every business sits around the table and says, we're focused on the customer. Okay, so you're focused on the customer, but you're not sending your customer out there to choose your products and services. You're out there saying this is what they want, but you haven't asked them. Right. And I think it's the same when it comes to employment, is companies say, we focus on the customer. Okay, so you're selecting and recruiting this training. When did you consult your customer and ask them, is this the person that you'd like to deal with? Do you want to speak to this person on the phone every day? And the answer is going to be no for 99.99% of companies. Yeah. But they should be engaging the customer.
And to your point, I mean, the difference between Microsoft and Apple is Steve Jobs was always very concerned about the customer experience. So they're always looking at that and anything they develop. And if you look at Microsoft, it's a bunch of engineers going, this is cool. So they just change something for the sake of changing it. And now we're spending the week trying to figure it out.
Like Google, what do they have, Microsoft Teams or something?
Yeah. they make this change. You go, why did you make a change? I know how to do it. The change didn't really help anything. Except now I got to spend an hour trying to figure it out. Whereas Apple just makes things so simple because they're looking at it from the engineers have always, in their culture, we're always taught to look at it from, like you said, the customer experience.
I think that's the limitation of a bigger business. They get so far away from the end user and the customer, where these smaller entrepreneurial ma and pa businesses, their fingers on the pulse. They feel it. They're interacting with the customer. They're getting live feedback in the moment. And it's not done through a survey. If a company asks me to do a survey and I press all these buttons, screw you, I'm not doing that. But if you talk to me, I will give you genuine feedback because my feedback's not going to fit inside your little 3 or 4 star rating that you're trying to achieve. I'll give you real feedback. I'll still buy from you, but I want to be real with you. But you can't do that with it's not that you can't do it, but most larger organizations won't because there's somebody in between too worried about what goes on their report. If we get a 4 or 5 star over here, how does it make me look? If we get a 1 or a 3, well, let's fudge it. It's like when people say, could you give me a 5-star rating? So what do you actually want? Do you want the 5-star rating or do you want real feedback to keep me as a customer?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we owned a pawnbroking business for 17 years, and we were frontline with our customers, and we knew the taste of our customers. We knew what they wanted and when they wanted it because we were on the front line.
Yeah.
And we would even do little things like every holiday, we knew that Sony PlayStations or the Microsoft Xbox would be in high demand. And we also knew between those times, there'd be little to no demand. So what we would do is we'd go on a buying frenzy to stock up for the customer, because the customer doesn't think about buying an Xbox today for school holidays. They think about buying a Xbox on the second day of school holidays when their kids have sent them berserk for the first 24 hours.
Yeah.
So they come in. So we were stocked up, ready to go. But we could also offer them a reduced price because we'd go on that buying frenzy for 9 weeks in between. And the customer was happy.
Yeah.
And I think all businesses need to have that fingertip feel.
Well,
Napoleon, one of the greatest generals, one of the greatest leaders, he was out on the front line with his battalions.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, there's a lot in what you just said. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I kind of boil it down to a triangle. You know, here your leadership team is 6 or 7 or 8 people up at the top. And then you come down to however number of employees who have all the information. They have all the information on customer relationships, on inventory, on everything else. And the companies that do well, that leadership team and the upper managers are down here at the bottom where all this information is, asking questions and being curious, not giving orders, you know, and giving policies and telling people what they're doing, what they're not doing correctly. You know, and it can work big. I mean, you look at Southwest Airlines, is still doing just fine. Herb Kelleher's, you know, was very clear on what he wanted, and his core values for his culture was very clear, and the company still runs that way. It's the companies that go out and get successful, and then they start buying other companies out, realizing they're bringing in other cultures that don't match your culture, and they start doing all this thing out of ego, with this CEO at the top, at the helm, trying to create this huge thing quickly for his ego or her ego, right? And that's where I think it goes wrong. So everything you're saying is right. We never go down from that top. In the companies that you're talking about that don't really perform well, these people at the top never come down to find out what's going on.
I worked with Emirates Airline. We were based in the Middle East, and we were the world's top 5-star airline. And Emirates Airline has around about 90 million passengers going through their terminal in Dubai every year. So it's a huge scale airline, and there's a huge customer base. But one of the frustrations for the cabin crew was we would fly the customer around the world. We could smell their breath. We could smell their stinky feet when they took their shoes off. We were that close to the customer.
Yeah.
But somebody in corporate would design a service sequence, and they'd say, here are these 5,000 things that you have to do for the customer between Dubai and London. And they'd give you a service sequence, and you would look at it and you'd say, it makes sense on paper.
Yeah.
But at 3 o'clock in the morning, when this person's been traveling for the past 27 hours, they're tired, they're jet lagged, they've been sitting upright, they've been smelling somebody else's bad breath. They don't want the lights on 100% bright at 3 a.m. in the morning. The last thing that they want is a 5-star service that goes for 4 hours on a 6-hour trip. It looks great on paper, but in reality, it's not what they want. And we would provide feedback to the company, and the course correction was very slow. And it was because the onboard team was separated from the management team. The management team was separated from the leadership team, and the leadership team was separated from the higher management. And we would give wonderful feedback, but it wouldn't get through because people would say, oh my gosh, I designed that service sequence. This is what people want. No. Get on the aircraft and you'll realize that people don't want to be squashed in like sardines. People don't want a 4-hour service sequence on a 6-hour flight.
Yeah.
They just want to sleep. They don't want to be disturbed. And that was a frustrator. The other thing that was frustrating for a lot of people was the only way to increase their income was to take a management or leadership role. And it happened to one of my friends. He was very good suited as cabin crew.
Mm-hmm.
But taking on the responsibility of leading people and managing people was way outside of his comfort zone. And I remember when he took the leadership role, I went for a walk around Dubai with him. It was probably about 45 degrees Celsius. And I heard him say, I'm going to die, about 100 times. I said, what's going on with you? He says, this new role, this new responsibility, all these things I have to do. He said, it's going to kill me. And he went from being a very motivated employee to a very unhappy leader. And he suffered. And I think his team would have suffered because he just wasn't cut out for it. And I think it was a very poor choice of the company. How do we get around that? How do we identify the leaders and the non-leaders and even identify the ones who can learn how to lead?
Well, again, you know, we got it screwed up. If you look at rugby or look at soccer or look at hockey, the coach does not make the top salaries. The coaches don't get all of the media hype or attention. It's the leaders on the team, the people who go in the arena and do what they're doing. So basically, in the analogy for Emirates or this person who got promoted, that person as a top flight attendant should make more money than the in charge on the plane, right? The manager who's in charge of managing all these people. Your First Break All the Rules is a great book, and it explains that where we got off track. Business is the only place where we highlight and acknowledge all the managers and pay them way more when they should be getting paid, you know, again, if they're a great manager, a good salary. But your top shipper receiver, your top flight attendant, your top salesperson should make more. If I'm working with a company and the president says, I don't want my top salesperson making more money than me, I'm like, I don't want to work for you. I don't want to help you with your business because you haven't figured this out yet. You know, you own the business. If your top salesperson makes more money than you, they're going to increase the value of your business. And at the end of the road, they're just going to have their commissions and their salary. You're going to have whatever the business sells for. And if you can't see past that, and you have to make, you have to have this ego and this, I have to make the biggest part of that dollar over all these other people, then you're a Sam's Club. You're not Walmart. And so if we can get into what a manager does, and the people who are on the front line who do a really good job as a leader in their own right, your top salesperson, you know, it makes more money than a sales manager, should make more money than the president, because that top salesperson knows how to sell. And that's, you know, the engine. And we can track it and we can score it. Really easy to measure it. And so that's the problem is in business, we've allowed management as a coach on the team to make disproportionate amount of money over the top people in the company who are actually out there doing it.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
I think Emirates, I love it. I think they would have been much better to reward the performers than the position. And a lot of really good people were promoted to leadership. So in my team, we had 17,500 cabin crew. We had around about 2,500 leaders. And most of them, the senior flight stewards or the stewardesses, didn't necessarily want that position, but they had to take it to be able to get a higher salary.
Right.
But you could see what it did to their soul. It ruined their physical health. Their emotional health was terrible. Their mental health was rotten, but their soul was getting destroyed because it's like, now I've got to do this for money rather than having the peace of mind of doing what you love. And we could all see it, but nobody, I think, was willing to reverse it. So if we're in a business and we realize that we've got the wrong player on the team or the right person in the wrong position, how do we reverse it? What do we have to do?
Oh, you got to, well, you started off this conversation with a culture. You got to make a cultural shift. And the only people who can do that are at the top. And the question is, what president who's making, I don't know, 40 million a year, 60 million a year, whatever these top dogs and some of these corporations make, is going to say, hey, this is way out of whack. You know, my vice president of sales makes 6 million a year or 12 million a year, and then the person below him makes like 400,000 a year. You know, so we have these leadership salaries and benefits that are so disproportionate to what they deserve. And how do you change that? In an entrepreneurial company, you can. A lot of the business owners I work with, they make less than you know, what their top salespeople make, or what their top accounting people make. You know, because they want the company to grow. Mm. And so what happens is when we lose sight of that, and then go into like you said, as the company gets bigger, and then you start hiring CEOs, and then they get to see what other salaries other CEOs are making, and they make it becomes a competition as opposed to how well the company's ran and managed, really managed. You know, it's hard to find good managers. It's hard to find that person who wants to have the tough conversations and hold people accountable and read numbers and make sure the processes are being followed. It's a tough job. And so, you know, to find those people who don't see themselves and understand that you don't deserve more than your top salesperson, because your top salesperson is out hammering doors and they only get paid when they sell, or they only really make a lot of money when they sell. Mm-hmm. You know, so how do you change that? Sometimes there's not enough dynamite. Mm-hmm. You got to blow up the whole company, or some competitor will come in who understands that. Look at the Japanese car companies, you know, Toyota, you know, who figured this out a long time ago and have done it well. And then look at the companies like Boeing, when they had that problem in 88 or 89, in 2019 with the 737 MAX 8. And then you find out, I didn't realize this until I looked into it further, it was McDonnell Douglas who actually bought Boeing back in the late 2000s, 2005, or somewhere in that spot. Boeing's core values were that if you were an engineer, if you were a guy installing wires on a 747 and you saw a safety problem, you could push a red button and everything would stop until they figured that out. They were so into safety. And so then McDonnell Douglas bought them, and that core value went out the door, and it was all about profit. It was all about, hey, I mean, that 737 MAX 8 was a race against Airbus, and they knew that it was going to be unsafe, but they wanted to get that business, and it was getting that business that was more important than safety. And then you go, geez, that doesn't sound like Boeing. And then you realize Boeing didn't buy McDonnell Douglas. McDonnell Douglas bought Boeing and changed the whole culture. Mm. And so when that happens, then you just have whistleblowers, and they don't want to blow the whistle because they're going to get penalized with their job, probably.
Well, I think a lot of them got more than losing their job. I think some of them might have even lost their life.
Yeah. Well, that's another story, right? You go on about that one for sure.
Yeah, we want to go down that rabbit hole. Yeah. Profit is an interesting thing, and I saw this with the introduction of the Airbus A380 at Emirates Airline. It was such a rush to get the aircraft to them and to get it flying so they could be the first in the world. And the cabin crew used to call the Airbus not the A380, but the A180, because it always had to turn around and come home. They would launch out of Dubai, and all of a sudden there'd be a technical problem. They'd have to dump all the fuel, then it'd have to land again. Yeah. And that was something that happened for years. And the other big rush to, get all these passengers inside here and make this the most profitable aircraft ever, they gave up the cargo space. So when the global financial crisis hit and this aircraft was flying from Dubai to New York, it was the most unprofitable aircraft ever Because when you're flying an aircraft through different airspaces, you're getting taxed based on the takeoff weight. And this aircraft is really heavy when it's not loaded. So it's unprofitable. The other thing is that there's probably 30% occupancy in the seats, but there's no cargo space. So you've got an aircraft flying with 30% occupancy and no cargo.
Yeah.
The other thing was when they actually finally filled it up and they started to fly long haul once again, there was no cargo space. So they'd have to tail the A380 with the 777-300 with all the cargo in it. So now they've got 2 aircrafts flying. Wow. And the goal was profit, but the reverse happened because they didn't think it through from the customer perspective. And those days of these mega aircrafts has quickly turned around because the customer's saying, we don't want that. Yeah. I don't want to be on there with 500 or 600 people farting next to me in a steel tube. I want a bit more space.
Yeah.
But it was profit driven, and that was unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah. So when people say, how do you change that? How do you change a culture? And then again, it goes back to, it's usually mergers and acquisitions without considering what you look at the companies who've done really well. They didn't do mergers and acquisitions. They built from within. We have a company in the United States called In-N-Out Burger, and I like their core.
My wife loves that one.
I love their the granddaughter. It's a 70-year-old company. They've never gone out for financing or money or investments. They've never franchised. They just grow from within, and people went from the minute they open till it closes, just lined up around the block to get in for a burger, fries, and milkshake or pop. You want anything else? Don't go there, because you want a veggie burger, they won't have it. You want a chicken burger, they won't have it. That's what they do, and they do it really well. And the kids are happy, and the kids get paid really well. It's a Costco story. Kids get scholarships. I go in there and take selfies with them because the kids are so happy and they're so proud to work there. And people go, "Oh, you can't get good help." You can if you want to motivate them and pay them and respect them for what they do. Mm-hmm. And so when you buy another company and you can destroy that culture so quickly.
Mm. The culture is king.
Yeah.
The culture is king. And I think one of the most important things in any business is they learn to listen really well. Yeah. And we've got to be open to feedback, whether we want to hear it or not, whether it aligns with our particular personal value or not.
Yeah.
And it's that willingness. It's, there's in neuro-linguistic programming, one of our beliefs is that there's no failure, there's only feedback. And if we're looking at the numbers, we should be able to understand the customer's taste. But if we really want to know what their taste is, we should just go to them and ask them what they want.
Wow. Yeah. For sure.
Do you want a chicken burger or this from In-N-Out Burger? No, I don't want that from you. If I want that, I'll go to KFC.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want it from you. I want it from somebody else. And that's okay. We don't have to be all things to all people. Here in Taiwan, which is a really interesting concept, we have a lot of markets, and at the markets, there's a lot of different food, but each stall specializes in one dish. Imagine this as a concept. There's somebody who only sells cobs of corn. That's it. You can have it boiled, you can have it roasted, or you can have a mix of both. That's it. And they're there and they sell it, and they've been there for 30 years. The person next to them sells sweet potato. Yeah. And here's the choice. Take it or leave it. That's it. That's it. You can either have a box of sweet potatoes, roasted, or none. Yeah. That's the menu. And not like you can have 5 or you can have 2. It's the box. Mm-hmm. And they do it. And here in Taiwan, we isolate these companies. We say, okay, that's the one I want the sweet potato from. That's the one I want the sweet corn from. But I don't want you doing something else because it's not what I want from you. It's not what you do best.
Yeah.
But these businesses have been around for, probably coming into their 3rd generation now.
Yeah.
And it's exciting as a customer. I know what I'm going to get every single season. And sometimes you go 6 months and these shops aren't open for 6 months because in the summer, the sweet potato is not growing. It's ready for harvest for the winter seasons. And it's a wonderful concept. Maybe you can't have $1 billion business, but you can make your customers happy and you can feel good about what you do.
Yeah. Well, there's always that classic scene from City Slickers, you know, where Billy Crystal's asked, what do you want in life? And the secret of life is this one thing. What do you figure that out and everything else doesn't mean anything.
In your book, The Miracle Manager, since you've written it and people are reading it, what is that one thing that people keep coming back to in the book? What is the one aha moment they go, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I read this?
I think because we've confused I'm really concerned about young people because people say leadership. And then you say, what does that mean? You know, what is a leader? Are you a leader?
The ability to get followers.
Yeah. And, you know, they need to get followers. They have to do this, they have to do that. And you go, no, they just look to the future and they do the right thing. That's all a leader is. And so why I like it is when somebody reads the book, they go, wow, I never thought about that. You know, I guess I am a leader. Yeah, you are a leader. And I'm a terrible manager. Okay. But at least you read that book. And I think the one takeaway is, I guess the one takeaway would be for your friend who perhaps if they read the book before they took the management position, they would have just said, no, I don't want it. And this is not me. I would never take a management position now. I'd be doing the company harm. I'd be doing myself harm, and I'd be doing harm to the people that I manage. You know, and so you know, when you start to realize that, hey, I like to disrupt the way people think. I like to be. I had a coach about 10 years ago. I had a company where I had a bunch of facilitators and people reporting to me, and I owned it. And the coach goes, "You don't even like doing this." And I said, "You're right. I don't like doing it. I don't like managing people, and I'm not good at it. And usually, what you're not good at, you don't like." You know, and so I basically went into EOS working with Gino Wickman, and I love it because you get in front of a leadership team, and we get to have a conversation like we're having about culture and using tools to measure whether people fit that culture or not. And if they don't, you know, let them leave, ask them to leave. Yeah, because, you know, you have to have certain people that, you know, if a certain company like Wade Bradley Smokers, everybody in the company is prepared to push a broom. Well, that doesn't work for Brewster's engineering company because he's got guys who went to university for 9 years and they're not going to clean toilets and push a broom. Mm-hmm. And they're all, you know, educated engineers who have no intention of doing that. So they're not going to fit in that culture working with Wade, because if you're working with Bradley Smokers where everybody's prepared to push a broom, if you're a CFO and the trucks need to get up by 5 o'clock, you're going downstairs to help the shipping crew load boxes. And to tell people that before they come in so that we don't have to fire them later and they do fit the culture, we're good. And so it's a huge subject in terms of how do you create that. It comes back to culture, right?
One thing that you said here, I think we can summarize as the doctor's creed. All doctors have a creed, which is primum non nocere. And it means first, do no harm. So if you know that you're not a good manager of people, you don't like to manage people, don't do harm to yourself.
Yeah.
And secondly, don't do harm to others. Primum non nocere. Do no harm. I mean, if we could have one value that ruled all the other values, imagine that. If all companies abided by that. Okay, I'm not going to let you lead or I'm not going to let you manage because you're going to do harm. And it's not good for you and it's not good for us.
That's probably a core value for any company. Do no harm. Yeah.
If we all subscribe to that as a world, imagine that. I think the wars might stop immediately.
Yeah.
We can change the culture of the planet.
And then we would get all doctors to follow that creed. That would be another talk.
Yep, and all the vaccine companies too.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because they might not be doctors, so they think, well, we're allowed to do a little bit of harm.
Yeah, exactly.
Kevin, thanks for joining me. Your book, The Miracle Manager, Why True Leaders Rarely Make Great Managers. Where can we get a copy from today?
Amazon's probably the best place to get it. It's on any bookseller if you want to grab it or listen to it. It's also on Audible. I like listening to books. I'll buy the book if I like the book and I want to take some notes out of it. But yeah, Audible.com, Amazon's company works well too.
Kevin, thanks for your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting me and thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.